4 pages from a black notebook. The lieutenant scrutinized the documents. A pass, he mumbled now. Lazily picked up the phone from the console. Reported, "Duty officer, there's a lawyer here. To see the detainee Iblev." Vlad didn't hear the rest of the conversation. The lieutenant turned around in his chair. His broad back, in a sweaty police tunic, hid all sounds. It was hot and stuffy in the detention center. A Chinese fan screwed to the counter lazily whirred its blades, blowing hot air down the corridor. "Come on in," the lieutenant gritted through his teeth. Second floor, room 206. The investigator acted dry and formal at first, but his shirt collar unbuttoned 2 buttons, and the dark stains under his armpits didn't go well with his stern tone. Gradually he relaxed, learning that he and Vlad had graduated from the same academy, and even sympathized with the lawyer. "That's how it is, isn't it? What year did you graduate from the academy?" "Wow, 2 years later than me, but I'm already a senior investigator, and you're doing paperwork for your boss." "I know the drill. Your bureau was offered to defend that bastard Ivlev. They promised to give you some greenbacks. The bosses were interested. Arkady Naumovich said, 'Naumich is yours.'" The investigator, understanding, chuckled. "A lawyer's son? Before I seriously hurt my brother and decided to send you ahead to see if you could get something out of him. If it's a high-profile case, or if it's easy to build a defense, get a little more publicity." "Well, it's your usual scheme. Justice, police, arbitrariness, rule of law, state of law is a ruinous business." The word ruinous, Vlad wrinkled his nose. The investigator got up from Perseus and took out a thin plastic folder with a white sticker on the spine with a number of cases. "Why am I going to read morals to you? Read it. You'll understand everything yourself." Nodding, Vlad pushed the folder toward him. The investigator smiled ironically and, keeping his eyes on the lawyer, lit a cigarette, shaking the ashes out the window. From the report of the interview of the witness Kazinets Alla Tarasovna to the neighbor, it came out that the suspect had called to the apartment of his victim, a certain Tatiana Villanova. "Yes, my son, the garbage was going to take out, came to the door with a bucket. You and I here. The elevator came to our floor. Who did you think it was? Igor, my son. He promised to come by the end of the week. Borky, Vesnins. They're all at work now, except for Tanechka. I looked through the peephole just in case. Times are dangerous, you know. We've had a notice on the entrance to the building for 2 years about the threat of terrorist attacks. I saw a guy come out of the elevator. Short, dark shirt, handsome. Well, I guess Tanya's got a new boyfriend." The testimony of the witness was not laconic, and the assistant investigator was young, meticulous, wrote down verbatim, so Vlad began to read faster, skipping the reasoning and numerous means. The stout guy said something, which the witness could not hear, and when Villanova, apparently calmed down by his words, opened the door, took out a gun, and shot Tanya. The frightened Alla Tarasovna instantly bolted for the owls, put on a chain just in case, and ran to call the police. When she returned, she cautiously looked through the peephole. The murderer was still standing in the doorway of Tanya's apartment, talking to someone on his cell phone. Frozen in an unnatural pose, Tanechka lay on the threshold. Her outstretched hand was still clutching her glasses, which the nearsighted landlady had never had time to put on. The laundered robe had turned brown with blood. Yes, son." He was holding the phone near his ear, listening like that. Then suddenly he shouted, No, that's enough!" And the phone fell. "And it's probably worth $100. And then he kicked it with all his might, only shreds flew in all directions. Then he walked into Tanya's hallway, looked around, and froze. He stood like that the whole time, until your guys came. Luckily, a patrol was passing not far from the scene of the accident. The duty officer transferred the call, and just 5 minutes after the neighbor's call, at the entrance braked white-blue UAZK. Surprisingly, the criminal was still in the apartment. At the sight of the determined policeman, he threw his gun on the ground and raised his hand. The senior patrolman admitted in his report that he did not have time to shout anything. The criminal disarmed himself, He did not resist arrest. "Well," asked the investigator who was watching Vlad, "is your client in trouble?" The lawyer shrugged his shoulders. "We'll see. Is there an expert examination of the weapon?" "There is somehow." This time, quickly turned around. "And weapons, and bullets, and traces of gunpowder on Villanova's clothes, and flushes, everything is there. Fuck your client. That's up to the court to decide." The investigator hummed, tossed Vlad a few more sheets. "Read on." Indeed, the expert reports all, as one, denounced Ivlev in the crime. The bullet found in the body of the deceased was fired from the submitted for examination pistol brand PM, produced by the Tula Arms Factory. Year of manufacture 1981, number 4356, 78, 94, 43. There are fingerprints on the handle of the PM, identical to Ivlev's control prints. Photographic and chemical samples, washes from Ivlev's hands and clothing, clearly show that it was he who fired the gun. The medical examiner concluded that death was caused by a gunshot wound to the heart area. Traces of unburned gunpowder were found on Villanova's body and clothes, and it can be unequivocally stated that the shot was fired from a distance of no more than 1.5 meters. Vlad looked questioningly at the investigator. "What's this for? There was such a case about 5 years ago. They took one of them, also with a gun, right over a corpse." So he tried his best to prove in court that it was not him who killed, but some sniper from a kilometer's distance. And he was the victim's bodyguard, but he didn't save his life and got shot. He was standing over the corpse because he rushed over to see if he needed help, only pulled out his ear when he saw the customer fall to his defense. He didn't prove anything to anyone, of course, but we've been on the safe side ever since. In passing, Vlad noted that the investigator was talking. That's good. It means he doesn't consider him a serious opponent. There's a chance he'll authorize a meeting with the suspect today. That would be a good thing. With evidence like this, there's no chance of an acquittal or probation. The suspect's interrogation report, on the other hand, was the height of brevity. On the official form, after the dry protocol phrases about the place and time of interrogation, it was written at the bottom. The detainee refused to answer the questions of the investigation. Vlad grinned. Yes, he had. If it hadn't been for the upcoming meeting with his lawyer, they would have let him play silence. He would have been beaten until he told everything, including his childhood fears and complexes. And not just beatings. Maybe worse. It is only in the TV series of The Militia is full of stupid boneheads, and in fact brave officers of the organs in full use of the achievements of technological progress. Electroshock, for example, and from prolonged exposure to current, begins random convulsions, acts cleaner than any lie detector. Good. Vlad stood up, tucked away in his briefcase organizer. When can I have a word with Ivlev? The pass will be ready in an hour. Wait, if you want. He didn't look like a killer at all. Short, rather stubby, with a scruffy 3-day stubble, Ivlev looked more like a slate jacket who'd been on a bender after his paycheck. The escort unlocked the handcuffs, nodded, and left. The deadbolts rattled. Good afternoon, Semyon Alexeyevich. I am your lawyer, Vladislav Khmelnytsky, Shkepetov and Partners. We have been approached by the Independent Foundation for Democracy and Justice with a request. I know. Ivlev's voice seemed strange to Vlad, endlessly tired and somewhat detached. That's how people who don't care what happens to them next usually talk. Have you been drugged? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. This case is transparent. It's all out in the open. With such evidence, the investigator doesn't even need a confession. It's more likely that Ivlev was just frightened, standing over the corpse. Didn't expect it to be like this. Blood, breathless, broken body. That's why he froze on the threshold. Good. His only chance now is to write a confession and cooperate with the investigation. The court will take that into account. Even in the investigator's office, Vlad realized that Arkady Naumovich would not take Ivlev's case. It was too lose-lose. Clearly a loser. So he would have to pull his own weight until the end. I know, I've been told. Vlad put his finger to his lips, pointed at the ceiling, shook his head. Quickly he wrote in his notebook, "The conversation is probably being recorded. Speak more carefully. If you have something important to say, write it down." And slid the notebook toward Ivlev. He shook his head. "I don't care." "Good." Vlad nodded, but didn't put the notebook away. "Let's get one thing straight. Right away. Do you agree to have me as your attorney?" Simultaneously, Vlad wrote, "Did you kill Villanova?" "Yes." Ivlev looked the lawyer straight in the eye and nodded slightly. "And you want me to represent your interests during the investigation and in court? So you admit that you shot Villanova?" "Yes." Vlad quickly scribbled at the bottom, "Accidentally or intentionally. Don't answer the rumor." Ivlev took the outstretched pen, hummed, and wrote, "Intentionally. She was the one I wanted to kill, and I killed her. The foundation has promised us financial support if we take up your case. So don't worry about payment. The evidence against you is very strong. You're likely to be convicted. A suspended sentence is out of the question. If you can get your sentence reduced even a little bit, that's a big win. I sincerely advise you to write a full confession. It'll help me." Gesturing for a notebook, Ivlev wrote, "I'm sorry you're going to lose the trial. At trial, I'm going to deny my wine. I want to get the full brunt of it." He put a bold period after the word full and added, "It's about time." The conversation hadn't gone well from the start. It got worse. Ivlev answered, but when Vlad was about to go to the office, he suddenly asked for a notebook and wrote quickly, "I like you, Vladislav, but I can't help you." Vlad reached for a pen, but Ivlev, as if succumbing to some sudden impulse, added, "However, if you are interested, in the storage room of the Kyiv station, in cell number 14, 265, there is a notebook. Read it. It will make sense to you. The code of the box is 2312. Vlad didn't get any other explanations. While the convoy was taking Ivlev out, Vlad smoked and, taking a moment, burned the last page of the notebook in the ashtray made of a crumpled Pepsi can. He got home only in the evening. As long as he had made arrangements with the investigator, as long as he had stopped by the bureau to report to Arkady Naumovich and also to Kiev, the cat came up. Inside the box was indeed a notebook, an old Soviet times, black Kalinkorovoy notebook with a rather tattered cover. Vlad couldn't resist flipping through the pages. Nothing special. Some kind of table, thick, exhausted notes. All right, we'll figure it out at home. The phone rang, just as Vlad was pulling on his shoes in the hallway. He had to throw his briefcase and notebook on a chair and run into the room, maneuvering between boxes. Vlad threw off his shirt in an acrobatic movement, managing not to let go of the receiver. Khmelnytsky was listening. "Dad! Hi!" Marishka's voice sounded a little angry to Vlad. And she's a big imaginator. Imagined God knows what, and now pretends to be angry. "Hi, daughter. Why didn't you pick me up from school today? We had a deal. I sat for an hour after school and you still haven't come." Vlad mentally slapped himself on the forehead. Of course, today was his day and he was so busy he didn't even remember. "Dad, can you hear me? Oh, I'm a senile old man. Sclerosis on my head, cirrhosis on my liver, rheumatism in my ribs." There was a chuckle in the receiver. "Daughter, I'm sorry, honey. I've been running around. Let's make an appointment for Tuesday, okay? I've got paperwork to do tomorrow and the weekend, and I'll pick you up on Tuesday." "Okay, Dad. Just don't forget. No, never. Cross on the belly." Her daughter's favorite saying made her laugh even more. Vlad realized he was almost forgiven. "Yes, as if remembering something important," he exclaimed. "I have something interesting for you." "Oh, what is it?" "I won't tell you. You'll find out on Tuesday." "Come on, Dad." "No, don't even ask. It's a secret. And if I tell you, it won't be a secret anymore, will it? Bear with me. And, Marish, Don't take offense. Daddy will make it up to you, I promise. You'll forgive Daddy. Okay, the daughter graciously agreed. But only one last time. One last time. Bye, Dad. Vlad opened the closet. Pristinely empty except for a perfectly cleaned business suit, for processes the only expensive thing in the house. Hung a shirt on the cracked shoulders. Nodded to his reflection in the matte mirror on the closet door. Tapped his finger on his forehead. Hey you, Rastya. Morishka certainly didn't belong here, in his dusty den. Vlad looked around. A typical den of a bachelor, busy only with work and nothing more. Dusty corners, peeling wallpaper, a bare hook in place of the chandelier. Katerina took her mother's wedding present in the divorce. A desk piled high with papers. The kitchen's no better. A pile of unwashed dishes. A fridge full of rancid convenience foods. I'll have to clean up a little this weekend. Marishka won't say anything, won't even wrinkle her nose. An extra day spent with Daddy is more precious to her than anything else in the world. But I don't feel comfortable doing it myself. Of course, when Vlad was graduating from the academy, he dreamed of very different pictures. Multi-million-dollar cases of oligarchs, the pressure of the prosecutor's office, and he, Vlad Khmelnytsky, relaxed and valiant, gives interviews to television crews. It didn't turn out that way. After a not very successful interrogation practice in the police, Vlad had nothing left but to go to the bureau, to work for someone else's image and someone else's fame, where he has been languishing for 5 years. As the youngest and the most inexperienced, he was naturally dumped on him all the routine, all the unnoticeable cases where there was no chance to spin. Ambition was a thing of the past, and now Vlad was pulling the endless burden of an errand boy. Sometimes he was entrusted to conduct state cases under Article 48, or such unpromising processes as today's. In the kitchen, Vlad put the kettle on, threw a couple bags of brew into a mug, and fed the microwave a slice of frozen pizza. Food, not pleasure. Food just necessary to keep the process alive. And you almost forgot the days when Katya greeted him with the delicious aromas of borscht, cutlets, and dumplings. The kettle whistled. Vlad splashed boiling water into a mug, dragged a notebook from the hallway, pulled up a chair. Let's have a look. The first 4 pages of the notebook were occupied by a neatly organized table in 2 columns. In one, in the even handwriting of excellent students, written by last name. In the other, a strange list of disasters and cipher notes. Against each surname, 1 or 2, and rarely more. Shibayev Yuli Nikolaevich, failure of the right engine of flight Tu-154, NRVL G-142. Ambartsumian Ashot Nagibovich, domestic gas explosion, Kommunarov Street 16, Lipetsk, Zh-12 P-24. Landslide near the resort village of Otdik, Krasnodar region, Zh-63. Severtseva Anna Igorevna. Failure of onboard systems of Su-25. North Caucasus, Military District. Training flight, Ju-2. Accident in the pumping system of the 4th workshop of Euro-Kimash. Settlement, crossed out Ju-4. P-250. Konstantin Maximovich Yakovlev. Traffic accident. Collision of a Yakarus with a heavy-duty trailer. Supermaz. Federal Highway, Ufa-Chelyabinsk, Ja-8 P-27. Fire in a metro car. St. Petersburg, Chiornaya Rechka Station. Electrocution of evacuees. G-12 P-29. Ignatiev Boris Stepanovich. Earthquake on Sakhalin. Epicenter 7 points in the area of Uglagorsk. G-89 P-300. At the left column of the table next to each surname, there was a boldly written tick. It was obvious that they put them with pleasure from the accomplished work. Strangely enough, Vlad could not remember any of the disasters and emergencies listed in the left column, no matter how hard he tried. All of them were without dates, and some of them were shortened to 1 or 2 letters. Here, for example, was an airplane against Shibayev's surname. It says Tu-154 NRVL. What is it? Norilsk Vladivostok? Or Novosibirsk, Vladivostok? Or even Novorossiysk, Vladimir? Although Vladimir doesn't seem to have an airport. It's also unclear with Ikarus. The federal highway Ufa-Chelyabinsk. It's about 400 kilometers long, if not more. But the gate P27 tag was easy for Vlad to decipher. G is probably victims, P is casualties. In major accidents, when the number of casualties is unknown, it's an approximation. Still, what kind of accidents are these? It was still possible not to hear about the accident in Ufa. It slipped through the regional news once or twice, and that's all. But the accident at the chemical plant, the media would spin it in such a way that one would wake up at night in a cold sweat. Vlad read on. Don't drink the water, Oleg Timurovich. Meltdown of the reactor core of the nuclear submarine PSKOV-SF at parking lot Jaish-4 P-37. Traffic accident. Collision of Vaz 2106, Vaz 2110, and MAZ 2110, 212th kilometer of Novosemperopolskoye Highway, JA-3, P7. Derailment. Damage to the canvas of the MO electric train. Smeared. Sergachev Posad, Jo-2, P29. Jeleznyakova, Antonina Grigorievna. Collapse of a residential building. Dilapidated foundation. Marshal, Zhukova Avenue 7. Kramatorsk, JOT-16, P17. Traffic accident. The accident of sewage treatment plants of the first stage. Aoros Bytkim Chemical Plant. Voznevo Settlement, Voronezh Region. G8, P500. Groundwater Breakthrough. Dolnyaya Mine, Sakaugol Association. JA-12, P19. Solodovnikov Ivan Sergeyevich. Collision of a repair train and a freight train. Frolovo-Mikhailovka section, 140 kilometers from Volgograd. J-19, P3. Fire at an oil well, Polernaya Zorya Field. Derrick number 29. Zich-214, P7-19. In total, there were 26 names on the list. When Vlad read the last one, he shuddered in surprise. He didn't believe it. He reread it again. Villanova Tatiana Andreevna. Against the surname of the recent victim was a whole list of disasters. Fire at a large ammunition depot somewhere in the Kurgan region. Collapse of an automobile tunnel on the Georgian military road. Death of an airliner at Yakutsk airport. Another accident with a tourist bus. An earthquake in Kamchatka. In the usual place to the left of the table, instead of a check mark, a pencil mark, small question mark, was barely visible. Below, someone started to write a new surname, but changed his mind. Only 2 letters could be read, a large R and an A. The rest was crossed out. That was the end of all the entries in the notebook. The rest of the pages were pristine. Vlad flipped the notebook over and only now discovered that the backside was thickly scribbled with another 12.5 pages. It was hard to make out the small and scrawled handwriting. But the first entry so captivated Vlad that he could not stop. Worked on Shibayev today. The target has a car, so this time it was quick and successful. Loosened the wheel mounts, cut the brake hose. Tomorrow morning he will go to the dacha. After all, 180 kilometers. The next entry laconically noted, Shibayev worked out. And another line and lower. The cops thought the brakes were to blame. The car is so burned that it is almost impossible to conduct a quality examination. Today it was reported that the Tu-154 landed safely in Vladivostok. It was a report? No, more like Ivlev's diary. With each line, Vlad's eyebrows rose higher and higher. He went out to Ambratsumian. The target is a pensioner, trading at the market. Next, I rented a place next to Ambratsumian. Got to talking. Tomorrow I hope to make friends. Next, we work well together. When he needs to leave, he asks me to look after the goods. In the evening he gave me some peaches and asked me to drink to our acquaintance. I could barely talk myself out of it. Today I gave him a drink in return. A small pass. And the same laconic note. Hambardzumian's done his job. I sent a man to the market to ask where the Armenian with peaches was, They said they were very tasty. I want to buy more, they answered. There will be no more Armenian. He died yesterday. He got mushroom poisoning. They confirmed it this evening. Botulism, severe form. At night they said everything was fine in Lipetsk. Shibayev. Ambartsumyan. Vlad opened the notebook first. Those are the first two names on the list. Vlad impatiently read on. His heart was pounding like crazy. A vapor protruded on his forehead. Why? Did he kill them all? Ivlev wrote in short, precise phrases, as if reporting to himself, sometimes straying into a confidential tone. Somewhere the entries were preceded by a date, sometimes just Tuesday. The next morning, the evening, the notebook clearly showed that Ivlev had killed not 2 or even 10 people. He is an employee of some deep-covered organization, which strangely calculates the connection between an unremarkable man and a terrible, devastating catastrophe. As long as the man is alive, disasters and accidents are inevitable. If he is destroyed, the catastrophe can be stopped. Vlad sipped long-cooled tea from his mug, grimaced, and spilled the rest into the sink. It turns out that the defendant is actually the real serial killer, even if he considers himself only an executioner, enforcing the sentence. Once in a while, the truth was plagued by doubts. Why won't they tell me how they calculate the targets? Why can't I know the truth? And if all this is a coincidence, a mere coincidence, then I am the most ordinary murderer. Lord, forgive me for my sin. After the 6th murderer, Ivlev filled a whole page with such reflections. A week later, he diligently recorded an overheard conversation between 2 specialists from the organization. Strange, but Ivlev never once called it even a shortened or abbreviation, just organization, with a small letter, and that's all. Today I heard in the reception that Engel and Granger released proofs of their method of correlation of statistical models of Shevr, and that now it is easier to work. The probability of error is no more than 1 in 1,000. I don't know who those 2 are, but they're said to have won the Nobel. I'm sure they deserve it. That day, Ivlev learned some very scary things. It turns out that the organization is sometimes wrong. They're let down by some statistics. The last entry said he went to Villanova. They're in a hurry. Nothing's certain, but the target has to be eliminated. First one on the list in 2 days. I asked for a day to work on the target. They said no. We'll have to liquidate Dirty. Still, no confirmation. Can't wait any longer. Yeah, I hope this target isn't a mistake. Pushing the notebook away from him, Vlad tried to recall the neighbor's testimony. Sort of something like that. According to her, Ivlev shouted into the tube. What was it like there? Again? No, that's enough. Vlad rubbed his temples with his palms, squeezed his eyes shut. It turns out that the investigator didn't just kill an innocent man. He had killed an innocent man by mistake, without preventing the impending series of catastrophes? Shit. What the hell is going on in my head? I don't need to believe all this nonsense. I've got names, dates of death too. Who's stopping me from checking it out? Vlad opened the organizer, ran his fingers over the keys. But somehow, we have it this time still on, and maybe a database of summaries of the city to raise. Yurka, the employee of the press service of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the city, Yuri Sechenov, was indeed on the spot. I understand everything. I'll do it if it's necessary. Just not now, okay? I've got a meeting in 15 minutes. You can mail me a letter, names, dates, and when I get back, I'll run it through the database and let you know. Thanks, I won't forget. Come on, what questions? Late at night, Vlad received a letter from Sechenov. All the victims on Davlanov's list died either as a result of accidents or simply died their own deaths. No criminality was smelled in any of the cases. The investigators had never even had any suspicions. Vlad flipped through the notebook once more, rereading some of the entries. Now he clearly saw in every condition of the diary almost clinical abnormality. God, was it possible to think for a second that all this nonsense had any basis in fact? The defendant's just not right in the head. Maniacs often assign themselves extra victims, or even just enroll perfectly healthy people in the corpses. It happens. Vlad hummed, said aloud. And it's not so bad. If it can be proved that Ivlev is mentally ill, or at least was mentally ill at the time of Villanova's murder, then, well, it's too early to guess. The first thing Vlad decided to do tomorrow was to take the notebook to his institute friend Inga Kostyukova. She now works at the Institute of Serbsky, will not refuse to help in memory of the past. Ingule will accurately determine the diagnosis. She's a pro in this business. Then it will be possible to build a defense around the black notebook, to appoint first a handwriting examination to prove the authorship, then a psychiatrist. And then we'll see. Suddenly, the clients are from the same category of absolute psychopaths that heard voices ordering to remove this or that person, or acted allegedly on the orders of the KGB director. In the morning, Vlad called Inga, and she agreed to help. They agreed on the evening. At 12 o'clock, the investigator was waiting for him. And then he had to visit the isolation center and talk to Ivlev once again. After yesterday's heat, it had rained during the night, and the temperature had dropped. Vlad regretted that he hadn't brought a jacket. However, when the engine of the 6 warmed up, the car became warm and cozy. Vlad put his briefcase on the neighboring seat and turned on the radio. From the yard he drove out to the hoarse voice of a northerner, played radio chanson. 3 blocks before the detention center, at the very moment when Vlad stood at the last traffic light, the speaker suddenly cut off the song. A disturbing newscast splash screen sounded. The announcer's voice burst into the cabin like a taiga snowstorm. We interrupt our program. This is a breaking news bulletin. As it has just become known, in the Kurgan region is burning ammunition depot long storage near the village of Sipaeva. Observers can hear explosions, glowing debris flying in a radius of more than 1.5 kilometers. Authorities in the Kurgan region have decided to evacuate several dozen residential houses adjacent to the dangerous territory. There have been no official reports of deaths or injuries, but according to unverified reports, 12 people, the guard of the inner perimeter, the head of the guardhouse, and 3 people from the maintenance staff are missing. Several locals have already been hospitalized with extensive skin burns. Soldiers from nearby military units have begun extinguishing the fire. By 18 o'clock, explosion technicians from the Kurgan region's FSSB are expected to arrive. Vlad hit the brakes with force. From behind, the protesters honked. A brand new 10 roared past. It was this wreck that first stood against the Villanova surname. Not believing himself, Vlad pulled a notebook out of his briefcase. Looked through the table again. Villanova, Tatiana Andreevna. Fire at a large ammunition depot in the settlement. Crossed out Kurgan region. G12-1. P38. It turns out that the 12 that are now missing are already dead, and 1 more person will die in the extinguishing? Vlad turned off the receiver, threw the notebook back on the seat, and thought, God willing, if Ivlev was really crazy. In the isolation ward, Vlad was greeted quite differently from yesterday. The lieutenant jumped up, startled at his appearance. I'm sorry. Investigator Rodomov isn't here right now. He'll be here in an hour and a half. He asked me to give you this. It turned out to be a medical examiner's report. Investigator Ivlev committed suicide at approximately 4:15 a.m. last night. Suicide by hanging, by all accounts. Signed, sealed. Having promised that he would come by the end of the day, Vlad was about to leave on the threshold and caught the uncertain, slightly frightened look of the duty officer. Shuddering, he quickly averted his eyes. It is almost impossible to hang yourself in the isolation center. Everything is taken from the detainees, including shoelaces and belts. And in the cell, there are not even sheets that can be torn into strips to make a rope. Vlad knew this, as well as the lieutenant. During the night, Ivleva was taken out. By whom? It didn't matter now. At home, Vlad turned on the TV and almost dropped the remote control. A brightly painted presenter was broadcasting against the background of a map of the Caucasus with a large pulsating dot in the middle.